listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
All right, how's it all going? I hope you're doing great, and thanks so much for checking out my podcast, Straight to Video. Now, I'm fresh off some shows with The Needful Things, kind of an underground supergroup comprised of a bunch of friends I've known for probably over 20 years now from playing in bands. We just get together every few years and rock out to each other's songs, and it's always a lot of fun. So a quick shout out and thank you to everyone that came along to one of the recent gigs at Call of the Wild Festival, and also our headline shows in London, Nottingham and Barnsley. Great to see everyone having such a good time. So on today's episode of the podcast, I get to check in with Scott Leftwich, all the way out in North Carolina, USA. Scott came to my attention when I saw an online video of his incredible 80s themed AirBnB, which has been running for a few years now with great success. This is certainly something to be seen, to be believed. Everything about it is legit, from the decor to the games consoles, vinyl collection, and just so much attention to detail. It's truly like stepping back in time. Not only that, but in the basement is an insane collection of original 70s and 80s arcade machines, which is known as Wieners Losers. My God, it's incredible. And as soon as I saw this, I know I had to get Scott on the show to chat all about it. To see it for yourself, then visit longlivethe80s.com, or you can search Wieners Losers on Facebook and Instagram. Not only that, but Scott has a great band called Scott Leftwich and the Atarians, which I urge you to check out. But right now, please enjoy my straight-to-video chat with Scott Leftwich.
Rob, can you hear me?
I got you, Scott. How's it going?
Good, yeah. I've just been busy. How about you?
Yeah. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. It's very cool to connect.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Now, where exactly are you located?
Easiest way is I'm right in the middle of the UK. Biggest kind of city is Nottingham.
Okay.
So I'm like 3 hours north of London.
Okay.
Have you been to the UK before?
Well, not really. I've been to Amsterdam, Belgium, Germany, but not to where you are. So I'd like to one day.
Have you ever been overseas with your band, or is it just kind of something that stays in your local area?
Well, within the United States, we've never been outside the United States, but we've been coast to coast, but never outside the United States. And we don't tour anymore. We stopped touring really when the arcade sort of took off. I loved touring in a way, but it's so much work at the same time. And when you do your own material,
it's a tough sell, man.
Yeah, it's tough. And I did all the PR, so I would get frustrated because you get your foot in the door somewhere, and then a year later, you go back and it's under new management and they don't know who you are. And it's like constantly starting over. But we still write, record, and release material. It's been quiet lately, but we've got some new stuff in the works.
I would imagine we're a similar age.
Yeah, I'm 54.
Okay, I'm 52 this year. So yeah, we grew up same time period. So I've played in bands for like 25 years and things. But man, it's tough to even get a rehearsal these days.
Well, it was easier when we were younger.
Exactly, yeah.
Because we didn't have as many responsibilities.
Used to rehearse twice a week. Religiously.
Yeah, man, music was my thing my whole life. So music was up here and the arcade was just a hobby. It was down here. And then almost overnight, the arcade was an overnight sensation.
You live in, is it Winston-Salem in North Carolina?
Yes, the city is Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Is that where you grew up as a kid, or somewhere you moved later in life?
More or less. I grew up close to here, so I've been here most of my life, if not, well, really all my life. I've moved around between North Carolina and Virginia, but I never went that far.
What's the town vibe? Is it a big place, or is it a pretty small town?
It's a small, big city. You know, I don't know the population. I probably should, but I don't know the population. But it's not very big. You know, the biggest city is Charlotte, North Carolina. And it's got to be 3 or 4 times the population there is here. So it's a nice city because it has everything you need, but it's not crazy overpopulated.
Where would you gravitate to as a kid, like city-wise, that felt huge? Or where'd you go to the cinema and all that kind of thing? Was there a small-town version, or was there like a big city version?
It was here. I would come here to Winston-Salem. I actually lived, okay, this is funny. I don't know if you'll get this reference or not, but I actually grew up about an hour north of here. And so we would come here. This was the big city, Winston-Salem, for us. But I grew up in Mayberry, North Carolina, which is the town from the Andy Griffith Show.
Right.
You familiar with the Andy Griffith Show?
I'm familiar with it because I've got family in the States. So when I go and visit, it's usually on reruns and stuff like that. So I do know of it. Is it like Little Ron Howard?
Yeah, yeah. So the Andy Griffith Show, Andy Griffith came from Mayberry, and the show is based on that town, Mayberry, which is a real town. A lot of times people don't know that that is an actual town, but it is. It's a big tourist attraction.
So Winston-Salem is where you'd come to visit and like shop and...
Yeah, yeah. That's where we would go to the mall and the arcade and shop for records and stuff.
I think we can all agree that growing up during the late 70s, right through the 80s and into the early 90s, it was a pretty magical time. I was lucky enough to experience it both here in the UK, but also I'd spend summers in the USA with my dad in Mississippi, like all throughout the 80s and early 90s. I mean, it was without a doubt the height of pop culture, and I don't think it's ever going to be beaten, which is why we hold on to it so much. But I think even with all like the movies, music, TV shows, most of all for me, it's kind of like a feeling. Did that feeling ever go away for you, or did you find yourself gravitating back to it as you became an adult and having all real life responsibilities? How do you kind of attach yourself to that time, other than obviously your arcade and Airbnb?
It never left me. So as time wore on, the 90s was okay. But post 90s, I really never left the 80s. It was, like you say, it was just such a magical time. Maybe everybody is sentimental about the time they grew up in to some degree, but you hear so much about the 80s. And I have a lot of teenage regulars that come here to the arcade, and they're fascinated with the 80s. They know the music, the movies, they know everything 80s. They're raised 80s, and I tell them everything you've heard is true. It's all true.
Other than it being quite as neon as everybody says.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
That was like the future vision we had in the 80s, but most of it was grey and brown.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Brown, but, hey, it was great. We had the music, the movies, the toys, the video games, and then subsidiaries of that. Network television, Saturday morning cartoons, breakfast cereal.
Go on then, favourite 80s breakfast cereal. It was very different over here in the UK.
Oh, I can imagine. I'll bet it was.
What was your favourite?
Oh, gosh. I'll say I don't eat it now. I can't. But Cookie Crisp,
right?
That was a great one. As far as retro cereals go that were short-lived, I did really love the E.T. cereal. That's the only one I remember flavor-wise that I really liked was E.T.
Nice. Mine was always the Pac-Man cereal. That was my first kind of marshmallow one, which I ever got when I was at my dad's, and I adored that. Then I remember they did a Gremlins one, which I specifically remember the taste of. It wasn't great, but I specifically remember the taste of it. And even now, when I go to the USA, if I go to like a Walmart or any kind of like grocery store, I still love just walking down the cereal aisle and seeing all the cereals.
I know, I do too.
That is like a proper step back.
Yeah, they had the toys in the side of the cereal and all the little gimmicks that we don't have today, which is sad, but...
It's a choking hazard these days.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, don't get me started. But remember the little records on the back of the boxes you could cut out? Man, it was just so cool.
So, obviously, you've got the arcade now. Where was your first arcade that you remember visiting as a kid?
Well, there was one in the Mayberry area called Take 10, and that's the one I went to the most, but we would come down here to Winston-Salem to get to the bigger arcades. There was a chain here called Aladdin's Castle, and so we would go there, we would frequent there, and walking into Aladdin's Castle, it seemed so big then, but it was like walking into Heaven's Gates. All the sounds and the smells and the people and just the excitement. It was just pure excitement, pure adrenaline. And that never left me. That's why this just kind of followed me through life.
I would imagine your arcade is bigger than pretty much any you ever went in as a kid, right?
You're right. But I never thought about it. One day somebody came in and said, you have more games than they had at Aladdin's Castle. And I looked around and I thought, oh my God, I do.
Yeah.
But that never crossed my mind until somebody brought that up one day. There's about 150 machines on the floor now. It's a 30-year collection, largest private collection on the East Coast of working golden age 80s arcade games. That being games from the 70s to 1984, nothing post 1984.
Is that a decision from you to not go further than 1984?
Yeah. That was my time. I think I was most impressionable 1980 to 1984. Pac-Man hit in 1980. 80 to 84, 85, that was just the time that resonated with me the most. And by collectors' standards, 84 is the cutoff for the golden age. And that's just because, in 85, 86 and beyond, games changed to fighting games, side-scroller shooters. You had your Mortal Kombats and all that stuff. And I liked games post 84, but these just resonated with me more. I don't know why. It's just the time I got sucked into, I guess.
Have you ever gravitated into pinball or like gumball machines or anything like that? Is that something that appeals to you?
Well, I like that stuff, but I never gravitated into pinball. Pinball is huge now, huge resurgence, and I'm glad. But from 80 to 84, the arcades were the new technology. And at that time, pinball became something your dad played, but that changed, later. So that's why I'm strictly arcades and no pinball. But I do love coin-operated machines, like you say, like gumball machines. And remember the change machines, you suck your dollar and pushes out tokens. And, I love anything coin-operated. I have a soda machine and just different things.
Am I right in thinking it was Space Zap, the first game you played on? Is that right?
Yeah, Space Zap was the first game I ever played, summer of 1980 on a pier at the beach. I was barely tall enough to see the game. I had to stand on my tiptoes to see it. And Space Zap is a smaller cabinet, but that's a lesser known game, but it's a great game.
And do you have that in the arcade now? Is that one which you've got?
Yeah, I had to have it. I had to go full circle.
Do you remember where you tracked that one down?
Ooh, I don't. I wish I had created a log or something for all of that. I remember where some of them came from, but some of them I don't. It's just been, it's been 30 years and, it's hard to recollect everything.
Who did you used to go to the arcades with? Was it a group of friends? Because I think you've got a brother. Does your brother play in the band?
Yeah, my brother who's in the band, I would go with him. He's 2 or 3 years younger than me, and we'd go to the arcades. So we experienced everything together. So it would always be he and I don't ever remember going to arcades with friends. Maybe the mall in general on occasion with some friends, but we were, what's referred to as mall rats. We just lived in the malls and we loved the arcades and the record stores and the toy stores and all that. It was so different.
Even though it was still on your doorstep and you probably went regularly, it always seemed like an event every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So exciting.
And I took it for granted. I completely took that time for granted. I thought, well, music will always be this good, if not better. So will movies and games. And, when you're living in that time, it's like, well, it's only going to get better from here. And, things changed. And
the thing was, the 80s, it was constant. You see those things pop up online, say, summer of 85, all these movies. It's like, holy crap.
Yeah.
One summer, not even sequels.
Yeah.
All brand new characters, brand new people, brand new films.
Yeah.
Just constant. And same with music as well. Just iconic after iconic. It was nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, it was nuts. I mean, it's crazy. And, and that's why you have reboots, which I don't subscribe to necessarily. I just stick with the original. The original is always better. And that doesn't matter if it's 80s or 60s or 50s or, the original stuff's it's always better.
You mentioned music was really big for you growing up. And again, what a time to be a music fan. Who was big for you? Do you have any particular favorite bands?
Gosh, probably the first band that I was really into, like a lot of kids, was probably Kiss.
Nice.
In 1978, Kiss, ruled the world. And I was in second grade. And I remember they were on the cover of every magazine. And all the kids were talking about Kiss. And so I wanted to hear what they sounded like. I didn't know. I mean, we all just saw them. We never heard them. So I asked my dad, I begged my dad, I said, please, on your way home from work, will you stop and pick up a Kiss record? He was like, yeah, okay, I'll get you something. And he came home with, oddly enough, Gene Simmons' solo album.
Wow, right.
From 78. So that was my first introduction to Kiss. But that album was good. I liked it.
That's a cool album cover to stare at, that's for sure.
Yeah, but I cannot imagine my dad walking into the department store asking for a Kiss album because he didn't know who that was. He was of an older generation. So I'm sure whoever was working there just said, here, this is popular. Okay. But it is kind of funny when you think about it, because he looks so evil and he's got the blood dripping down. And it's like, my dad bought that for me. But that was cool. So I picked up, some more shortly thereafter. I really became a big fan of them. But when the 80s hit, gosh, I mean, music was just so good. Now, I will say I was a big Duran Duran fan. Love Duran Duran to this day. That's my go-to.
So many great songs. They were my sister's favorite band, still are to this day. And we've seen them live a bunch of times. And they're still awesome, man.
That's fantastic. I saw them live later. I never saw them back in the 80s, but they did a reunion with the original band, even Andy Taylor, for a while. And I forget when that was, sometime in the 2000s. And I got to go see that with my brother. And that was heavenly. I loved it so much. First concert was the Police, the Synchronicity tour.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So that was like a, blockbuster concert. What was yours?
My first one was Iron Maiden.
Oh, my gosh. That's a good one.
When was it? I was pretty late I always loved music, but I was pretty late to becoming like a full-on music fan. So that wasn't until I was like 16 or 17, and it was quite cool because they did what they called the first 10 years tour, where they went back to playing like venues which they used to play when they first started out. So it was in a really small venue, so it was pretty cool to see them. Then we saw them a couple of months later when they did some arena shows with Anthrax supporting them.
That's so cool. I sometimes tell this story. I saw Rat, the Invasion of Your Privacy tour, in 85, I think it was. And it was kind of funny because the opening act was some band nobody had ever heard of called Bon Jovi.
Wow.
But Bon Jovi had, their first single was on the radio at that time. It was Runaway. But nobody really knew who they were, really.
Were they awesome, though? People were like, holy shit, these guys are great.
Oh, yeah. Of course, they were great. Like, they come out and they do their show and everybody's cheering them on. Those were the days when people cheered the opening act. Sometimes you don't get that. But that was, so many. And I kept all of my concert stubs, all my ticket stubs, and I put them in a shadow box and they're displayed in the Airbnb.
Did a lot of like those kind of hard rock bands come through your area? Was that like a big scene, late 80s?
Yeah. So everything was a big scene as far as pop music, hard rock, heavy metal, whatever you want to call it. Everything from Iron Maiden to Journey to, whatever. I mean, it was all celebrated.
Any bands which you've never had the chance to see who were on your bucket list?
Not really. I saw some great stuff. It didn't work out. My sister went to see Prince back then, like the Purple Rain tour, and I didn't get to go to that. My mom, for whatever reason, wouldn't let me. I think they just didn't want their geeky little brother going with them, so I missed out on that one.
So you got a younger brother and an older sister?
Yeah. My older sister worked a Ticketmaster outlet. So if you remember back in the day, when you go see a concert, you would have to get in line, and some people would camp out overnight.
We had to do that for that Iron Maiden show.
Yeah, well, there you go. Perfect. So my sister ran one of those Ticketmaster outlets. So we were spoiled. She would get tickets. Boom. Like we were first come, first served. We were first served. We weren't first come, but we got tickets before anybody else. I had front row center for the Rolling Stones. Believe it or not. And I paid I've got the ticket upstairs. I think it was like $23. $23 front row center Rolling Stones. My gosh.
Insane, man. Insane. I love your own band, though, Scott Leftwich and the Italians. You say you've been around since the early 2000s. It's kind of a sound which I think a lot of people of our age it's a result of the time we grew up, really. I mean, even though we grew up through the 80s, music changed so much during the 90s, and your sound's got to me, it's just got that cool kind of power pop. It reminds me of people like Matthew Sweet and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I have heard that before. That's cool.
How often do you all get together then? Is it just as and when now? It's just doing it just for the love of the band, and if anything comes up, we'll do something.
Yeah, we'll get together in the studio and do our thing. And that's not the only time I ever see the guys. We're friends. You know, we've been friends the whole time. And even before that, well, obviously my brother's my brother, but Brian, the bass player, he was a high school friend with my brother. So I've known all these guys my whole life, it seems. Ricky, the drummer, went to school with those guys too. So we've known each other forever and ever. Fortunately, we still do it. We still get together. We're talking about shooting a video for a new song. We'll see if that happens.
You've shot quite a few videos in your arcade. I mean, it's the perfect backdrop. The video for The Chase is awesome. It kind of suits the whole aesthetic of the band and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Tell us about the arcade then. I mean, you've been collecting and restoring since the late 90s. Did you ever plan for it to get this huge? With how many machines was it? Around 150 machines now, is it?
Yeah, about 150 machines and counting. I own more than that. It's just that's what's on the floor right now. You know, I devoted my whole life to music. You know, I'm a singer-songwriter. It's just what I do. It's in my DNA, and it's just who I am. But in 2014, my wife and I moved into a new home, and I purposefully scouted this house because I knew I would have a basement arcade. So looked for a pretty large house. I wanted something that I knew I could never fill up. Well, I proved myself wrong. At the time, this place was just monstrous. I thought, I'll never fill this up. But I had about 50 machines in here in the beginning in 2014 and just had the notion one day, I thought, well, you know, I wonder if people would want to come in and play, and I'll charge an admission and I'll use that money to restore these other games I have in storage and just make it bigger and bigger and bigger. So I contacted the local news stations, and one of the local news stations said, yeah, that sounds great. We want to do our morning show live from your basement. I thought, okay, we'll do that. And that was it. I mean, that moment in time, it was like just this explosion. Because in 2014, and I don't know what it was like there where you are, but in 2014, here in the U.S., there was no such thing as a barcade. Those didn't exist, except there were 2 or 3 out west. That was a very new thing, but I wasn't familiar with them. I didn't really know anything about it. So in 2014, when I did this, people were so eager to experience that again that it really just exploded. It was an overnight sensation, and it's snowballed ever since. And we call it Wieners and Losers. That's the name of the arcade, and that's because we serve hot dogs on the days we open. We open 2 Saturdays a month, invitation only. You have to contact me through our social media to get into the database. Then in November of 2021, I opened the 80s themed Airbnb.
Was it just a natural progression? I mean, you brought this house. Was it renovated to a modern standard and you've had to take it back to the 80s?
Well, no, this house, it was built in 1958, so it was an older home, but out of just coincidence, there's a staircase that goes up to the first floor, and the room adjacent to it, it kind of splits off, but one of the rooms that's adjacent to it just happens to be this huge room that I guess was a den, maybe, but we never used it. It just sat there for years. So I thought, well, you know, I could make this the room. It already has the cool wood paneling, what we had. So I told my wife, I said, you know, there's really no investment. I already own everything. So I put it together, launched it in November of 2021. It went viral a couple of months later. There was a TikTok video that got over 7 million views. And when that happened, it just went completely nuts. I was booked 24/7 for 2 years. I didn't take a vacation, nothing. And it was intense because I already had another job.
I was just going to say, was you juggling between the two?
Yeah. So I was working 2 full-time jobs basically. And it was a struggle, but it worked out. And I told my wife, I said, this can't last forever. Well, it did last for 2 years, 24/7, and then it sort of slowly tapered off a little bit, and now it's just kind of steady. But during that time, you know, we had people come from Europe, Australia, South America, China, Canada, just all over. And then I realized, okay, so there's nowhere in the world, apparently, where you can stay in an 80s themed room. You have access to every game console ever made, and an arcade this massive all in one does not exist. But I didn't think about that. I was very naive when I went into all of this.
Has that almost been the magic of it in a way, that there was no preconceived thing, or this will be really good for business, this will bring people in? It just evolved naturally from your love of it, and that shows in what you've done, and people have reacted to it, which is the most perfect way, really.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. That's exactly it. I've since left my other job. This has become my job now because, it just had to be that way. I'm too, I guess I'm too old, or I feel like I am, to work two full-time jobs anymore.
You only have so much energy, mate.
Yeah, 100%. So this is my job. I just manage, Wieners and Losers. There's private parties, the Airbnb stays, all of that combined. It's definitely a full-time job.
All the items and memorabilia in the bedroom, are they from your own collection?
Some are. All of the game consoles I collected in the 90s. My brother and I used to go to flea markets and we would just buy up everything because at that time you could buy an Atari 2600 and 20 games for $5.
Wow, love it.
And I knew if I didn't buy all of these things that they were going to go to a landfill, but I had no big picture. I don't know why I purchased all of this stuff. I just knew it was going to go to a landfill and I didn't want to see that. So fortunately for me, my brother was one of the first people to make a homebrew for the Atari 2600 in the late 90s. And when that happened, the consoles, 70s and 80s stuff started to become nostalgic again. And they started having these conventions in Philadelphia and Las Vegas. So I mass produced his game. We would go to these conventions and I would bundle all these hundreds of consoles I had purchased for years and years. And I would sell that stuff and I would take all the money I made around to the different vendors at the events and buy games that I didn't have. And so it was right place, right time. That's why our console collection is so massive, because it was just right place, right time. At that time, the value wasn't there. Now it's, as you know, it's insane.
Yeah. Are there any places near you that you find new items, or are you just constantly scouring eBay, or what's your game plan?
Well, I don't have one. Like the console stuff, I sort of let go a while back. I rarely purchase anything for consoles anymore. We just have so much already. But I love that stuff too. My first was the Atari 2600, and then we got a NES. What was your first?
I'm trying to think now. I had a few handheld ones first. Got it up there. I've got Astro Wars and Firefox were the first ones. I don't know if they made it to the States or not. But then just home computers became a big thing around, it was around 1985 in the UK. So it was like Commodores and Sinclair Spectrums and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I was into. And I never really gravitated into like the Nintendos. I love the Atari. I had friends who had those. But past the Spectrums and the home computers, I never went into the Nintendos or the Segas and all that kind of stuff. So that was more for my younger brother.
Yeah.
He had the Super Nintendo and all that kind of thing. So, and that frustrates me because we had like the old Commodore computers. And man, when I was like 11 years old, I was doing like little programs on them and things like that, proper coding. I would have no clue whatsoever nowadays. But as a kid, you're just this sponge where you can figure all that kind of stuff. Man, if I'd have kept doing that 40 years from now, I'd be working for Apple Computers or something like that.
I know. That is interesting how, I guess we didn't have anything better to do, I suppose. But, to look through the basic book and figure out how to program different things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was cool back then, but loading it up on the cassette tape and all that kind of thing with the crazy noises.
Yeah. I had a friend that lived just down the street that had a Commodore, so I would frequent his house and we would do the same thing. So I'm with you on that.
I was like big into like G.I. Joe. It was branded as Action Force over here, but I was big into that, and all your favorite characters had the code names and stuff. So me and my buddy would give ourselves our own code names. So I'd make these little fact files which would come up on the screen and all this kind of stuff. I wouldn't have a clue now. 10-year-old me, he had it figured out.
Yeah, that's right. Man, that is so cool. What we did, the things we did to occupy our time was so cool. Same thing, my brother was huge into G.I. Joe, Masters of the Universe. I was into DC and Marvel, so there were a couple of toy lines that I had everything. It was called Superpowers, and the other was called Secret Wars. And I had that entire line. I had every vehicle, every action figure. I collected them all as they wanted me to. But man, those toy lines and some of the failed toy lines were good too. I mean, they were very experimental with toys then and action figures. And man, that was so cool. But I loved G.I. Joe too. I loved that line. I'm so familiar with it. We used to cut out our proofs of purchase and mail in for the special toys.
There was so much cool stuff you got with those mail-ins as well.
Yeah.
It took me a while for my young brain to figure out, like, this is like some really cool stuff that you can get if you send away for it.
Yeah, and you couldn't get it anywhere else.
No.
And that's what made it, we wanted it so badly.
Very clever, Mark. Like, you got to buy more figures to get this.
Yeah.
show.
Oh, yeah. They knew what they were doing. And I remember the first thing we got, and I lost it eventually. I wish I had held on to it. I wish I hadn't lost it, but I sent away for the Hooded Cobra Commander.
That was a great figure, man.
Oh, man, that figure. And, that was a little social status boost in school. Well, look what I've got. Nobody's got this.
Probably like $100 on eBay now for the original one. Damn it.
Yeah, I know.
Now you say like the Airbnb, it's become your full-time job. So it's great that it's really busy. That must be great financially. But I mean, the reward must be seeing people's reactions when they arrive.
Yes.
Do you like almost take it for granted now? Then you need that reality check when you see people walk through the door.
No, I do not take it for granted. But you're right. I see it over and over. And you would think that it would become mundane, but it does not because, well, it just doesn't. Maybe it's just that, you and I are at a certain age now where we don't really take things for granted. Maybe when you do when you're younger. But, people walk in that's my age and their eyes bug out, their jaws drop. And I've even had instances where people have come in and started crying because they're seeing and hearing things that's attached to a good memory. I am so fortunate to be able to see that with my own eyes and to experience that. When those moments happen, I so wish I had that on film because that is gold. But yeah, it happens every time. I mean, every time people come for the first time, they just completely wig out. And I get it. I mean, the 80s was just magic. We all had something we loved, whether it was arcade games or the toys or, the music, the movies. We all had things that we loved from that period. And it was magic.
Do you have other events outside of the Airbnb and the arcade bookings? Do you have like themed events or any kind of like mini conventions or guests?
Well, we have a couple of side projects. One thing we're doing now is, and you know what? Nobody's doing this. And now watch, everybody will start doing it. But nobody's doing this. Listen up, world. What we're doing now is, and we just started, we're showing a movie from the 80s that has to have a game tie. And what I do is we'll show the movie, then we'll go up to the Airbnb and we'll play the game that's associated with the movie. We'll serve dinner. So it's an event. You watch the movie, you play the game, you have dinner. It's like this weekend, we're showing E.T. Well, you think, okay, E.T., everybody's seen E.T. But we're going to show E.T., then we're going to go upstairs and we're going to play E.T. on the Atari 2600. And we're also going to Zoom chat with Howard Scott Warshaw, the creator of E.T. for the Atari 2600. So that's sort of the cherry on top. So I try to go the extra mile to make all these events interesting.
How many people can you get in for an event like that?
Well, not a lot because the arcade is jammed. I keep it small. It's like, I think my top is like 12 people max. But, the Airbnb, we can make it work. We can get the people in there and everybody will get to play. And I'll actually set up another television in the room with that game, maybe on a different console. Like, we might have it on the Atari 400 or whatever ET was ported to or whatever that game was ported to on other consoles. That way it's not just everybody's on one console. We can kind of split them up. But that's really fun. We've started doing that and that's just so fun. And we also are doing a game show called Arcade Animals. And do you remember, maybe you don't remember this because this was a U.S. thing, but there was a show called Starcade.
No, we didn't get that.
Well, it was a game show where contestants would compete on games from this time period, and the big winner would get to play and try to achieve a certain score on a game. And if they could do that, they would win their very own arcade game. We do the same thing here. We'll have 2 contestants. They'll compete on 5 randomly chosen games in the arcade. After 3 games, whoever has the highest point total will get to move on. They'll get to choose from the other 2 games that are standing, and we'll set a certain score, a certain bar on those for them to achieve. And if they can meet or beat that score, they'll win their very own vintage 80s arcade game. I just give them away. And that's called Arcade Animals. That's on YouTube. We've got 16 episodes.
Nice.
That's just something we're doing for fun.
And that's where people gravitate to. The people know when you're doing something because you love it.
Yeah.
That's the best way. You've proved that works, man. You proved that works.
Well, I appreciate that. And how often do you get to the U.S.?
When I was growing up, I used to spend 6 weeks there every summer in Mississippi. Totally took it for granted. Just sat and watched TV and ate cereal all day. And then once you leave school or college, you have to pay for your own plane ticket, so you don't go as often.
Right.
Well, I love the US. I've got friends all over. I was literally in Mississippi in April visiting my dad. So I try to come over at least once a year.
Okay. Well, Mississippi is not close, but if you're ever in North Carolina, if you ever want to time travel back to the 80s, just let me know.
I'm there, mate. It's on the mental list now. So
Well, it is something to behold. I'll tell you that. And you may know this, but for your audience, they may not know it. If you book the Airbnb, there's an 80s stereo stocked with 80s vinyl. There's a VHS library. There's every game console ever made. The room is filled with vintage collectibles and everything works. It's not just for show. It's all hands-on. Of course, you get a block of time in the arcade, which is a 30-year collection and the largest private collection on the U.S. East Coast of working Golden Age 80s arcade games. So there's a lot to take in. I mean, you could stay a week and still not touch everything.
Has it influenced anything similar in the local area? Has anyone set up, not the same, but anything kind of 80s related or done an event or anything like that? Nothing kind of spawned from it yet?
No. I mean, there's 80s tribute bands, and that sort of thing, but I think those have been around for a long time. This has not really spawned anything like that, I don't think. Now, I've been contacted by 2 or 3 people since I started it, and they were interested in doing an 80s themed Airbnb. They thought, well, I think I could do that. Okay. And they asked me a few questions. Well, it never panned out. They never did it. And they don't need to tell me why. I know why, because it is a tremendous amount of work. And the biggest con for me personally with it is that when I have Airbnbers, I'm locked down. I can't leave home because they get a block of time in the arcade. So I got to turn the arcade on. I have to monitor it while they're down there, and I have to turn it off. So that's a big part of my day gone. And I'm on call in case they want a different game console. I'll say, you text me, I'll come in, I'll connect it for you, make sure you got all the games you need, because people can't connect those systems. They don't know how, they don't want to deal with that. And I get it. So it's like being on house arrest. So most people don't want to give up their personal time like that, but I don't mind because it makes so many people happy. And I do make a living from it, but it makes a lot of people happy. And I completely understand why nobody else would want to do it. And, and I work on the game machines. See, I do all the restoration. So it just so happens I can, work on all the games. I can do all the PR. I can fix the consoles. I can fix anything if it goes wrong. And, most people don't have that knack.
We've got our 80s video shop over in the UK, which is like a video shop museum. And one of the things that people say to us all the time is like, oh, you should rent out the VCR players and people can take the VHSs home. And it's an amazing idea, but I don't want that call at 8 p.m. on a Saturday night saying, how do you get this thing to work? I cannot do that. I just want people to come and look at my tapes and go, this is cool. I remember this. So hats off to you, mate, for being able to do the whole thing.
It seems everything's made a comeback with vinyl and even cassettes and, we're now VHS. I understand why. I mean, there's little subtle things about VHS that people forget, like the advertisements in the beginning and the FBI warning and all this, all the little nuances. I love VHS, and this whole thing here has been a roller coaster ride, but it's been fun and hopefully one that will never end.
The 80s are sticking around, man. It's like 80s, it's getting into 90s stuff now, like early 90s. But the 90s are kind of like a hangover of the 80s anyway.
Yeah.
I think it's just going to stay here because like we were saying earlier on, it's like the 90s was probably like the last decade where you can remember a certain vibe and feeling. Since then, the 2000s, it's all this weird mishmash.
Yeah.
There's no like definite look or feel. It's great that kids love the 80s these days. They love Stranger Things. They love all that kind of stuff. But that's a fallout from our generation, whilst it's theirs, they've not really got their own specific thing, which is cool to see, but it's almost a little bit upsetting that they've not got their own thing.
Yeah, it's sad. I have a lot of teenage regulars that come here and they know all the songs on the jukebox. They're familiar with the movies and they love the 80s. And I'm thankful for that. That's something else I didn't foresee, but, and they love the arcade and they love the arcade games of the 80s because those games are the ultimate test of hand-eye coordination. And you couple that with the high score feature, that's a style of gaming they can't get now. So it's new to them and they fall in love with it. So I have many teenage regulars that come here and that base keeps getting bigger and bigger. So I understand what you're saying, and I'm with you on that. It feels like they don't have their own thing. And I wish they did, but I guess at least they have this or,
They have a cool thing, though. They have a cool thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I love that you've got a Journey arcade machine in your collection. I think I've heard you say that when the Foo Fighters came through town one time, you hooked them up with some arcade machines in like the backstage area. How close do the band Journey come to North Carolina? Because they tour quite a lot. You could do with getting that machine backstage for them. That'd be cool.
Oh, I would love to do that. I would love to pull that off. That would be fantastic. But it just so happens like the keyboard player for Foo Fighters is a friend of mine. And so they're our age. And so when they come to town or close by, I'll send them a list and they'll pick maybe 5 games and I'll take them to the show and I'll set them up backstage and we'll play games.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they're cool guys. Dave, Chris, the guitar player, and Rami, the keyboard player, they are really into it. Now, the other guys are just kind of like, they were there, but they weren't players so much. They just kind of hang out. But, Dave Grohl, he loves Galaga and Joust. He always wants Galaga. He always wants Joust. He picked something different last time, and now I can't remember what it was. But anyway.
How cool is that, man? That's awesome.
Yeah. Those guys, they're nice guys, and they are so professional. I've never seen them drink before the show. They take their shows so seriously. When I'm with them, they just play games and geek out, and they have a small room set up at every show, and they'll go into this room and they'll jam out little things, fine-tune things before the show. Now, that's something that I didn't predict or didn't foresee, and that's impressive to me as a musician. You would think that a band like Foo Fighters would just have it, they just got it. They don't need to rehearse before the show, but they will do that, and it's every time. And I'm so impressed with how serious they are, but they're nice guys.
Awesome. Right. I always end with the following question, but I guess you can twist it a little bit. I usually ask people to time travel to a Friday night in the late 80s or 90s and you head into the video store, but I guess you can just head into your own 80s bedroom. And what movie soundtrack do you have on the Walkman or put on the stereo? And what 3 tapes are you going to choose for the weekend?
Soundtracks, I always think about Miami Vice.
Right.
The Miami Vice soundtrack is amazing. I think the first soundtrack I ever purchased was Ghostbusters.
Nice.
And, and the Back to the Future, that was a great soundtrack too. But if it was me personally, I'm definitely going with Miami Vice.
You're the second person to suggest that in the last few weeks.
Oh, yeah, man. Miami Vice. That soundtrack is just, that was a big selling point for that show. In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins, that song wasn't successful. That song sort of flopped until it was on Miami Vice. And he actually re-released that in the States after that. It became just a huge song thanks to Miami Vice. But 3 films that I'm going to choose, oh my gosh. I got to go with Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you hear Breakfast Club a lot, but Breakfast Club is just...
Man, John Hughes, dude, he had it nailed down in the 80s.
Yeah, he did. But then I would probably go with something maybe a little more out there like Swamp Thing.
Oh, nice. Was you a big 80s horror guy?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I loved 80s horror. And, even now, like people love 70s and 80s horror. it's just so good. The special effects were just fantastic. But yeah, I loved 80s horror, man. I was totally in for Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, all the big blockbusters, but I loved all the smaller films too. The Hitcher.
Yeah. The trailer for The Hitcher terrified me. I never saw that till I was an adult because the trailer terrified me so much. It's like, I don't want to see this film.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, man. It's just so many good ones. The Car, that's an old sentimental favorite of mine. So many good ones. Oh, my gosh. Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Do you know which ones watched the most from your Airbnb?
That's a good question. I don't have a huge selection of horror, but I've got, the hits, certainly. Probably, definitely Halloween. And I know a lot of people will view Pet Sematary.
Nice. Great film, man.
Yeah, Pet Sematary gets a lot of views. I'm probably forgetting something, but yeah, so many good ones.
Love it, man. Love it. Scott, I'll let you go, but thank you so much for chatting with me. I really enjoyed that, man. That was really, really cool.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for having me.
And I promise, when it's a USA road trip, you're in the diary.
That sounds good. Well, if anybody out there wants to check it out, it's longlivethe80s.com. Visit longlivethe80s.com and you'll see it all.
Keep in touch, and I hope things stay as awesome as they have been just recently.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate your time, too. I appreciate what you do.
All righty. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll catch you soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much to Scott Leftwich of Wieners and Losers out in North Carolina for joining me on today's podcast. I think I met something of a like-minded spirit just there, and I can't wait to see what Scott does next at the arcade and his fantastic Airbnb. Fingers crossed I can visit someday. As mentioned, please check out longlivethe80s.com or search Wieners and Losers on social media for all up-to-date info. There's also loads of video blogs on YouTube, including one by the late Adam the Woo, which are all worth checking out. And over at our 80s video shop in Alverton, Derbyshire, which is just 10 minutes from junction 28 of the M1, I want to let you all know about our 4th birthday event on Saturday the 18th of July with special guest Simon Williamson, who performed as Max Rebo in the Star Wars movie Return of the Jedi. We're also going to be joined by the fantastic illustrator and poet Chris White, who we're all big fans of too, so it's going to be a really fun afternoon from midday until 4 p.m, so I hope you'll be able to join us. To stay up to date on this and other events, then please follow us on whatever social media platform you choose, simply at 80s Video Shop. But feel free to come visit us at the weekends when we're open Saturday and Sunday from 11 till 3. So that is all for this episode of the podcast. So until next time, make sure to always be kind, please rewind and unwind, and I'll speak to you all real soon.